How did I end up with a guard parrot that would save my life? His name was Apollo. I paid $50 and took him home that same afternoon. At first, my boyfriend Carl said he was fine with it. He even laughed when Apollo would mimic his voice, but it didn't take long for that to change. Within a week, I could feel something shift. He started making little comments like, "You talk to that stupid bird than me," and "I think you love the parrot more than me." At first, I thought he was joking, but the jealousy behind his smile was real. That's when everything started to unravel. Carl's jealousy over Apollo turned into something darker, something controlling. He began criticizing everything I did, from how I cooked dinner to what I wore when we went out together. One night, he grabbed my wrist so hard it left marks and told me I was worthless. I realized I was trapped, living with someone who was getting worse every single day, and the only one I could talk to about it was Apollo. The comments turned into full-on guilt trips within a month, and suddenly I was apologizing for things that made no sense. Carl would say things like, "You embarrassed me in front of my friends tonight." "I barely said anything," I whispered. "Exactly," he snapped. "You made me look like an idiot. You could have at least laughed at my jokes." Or he'd glare at me when I mentioned visiting my sister for the weekend. "You clearly don't care about me if you'd rather be with your family than with me," he'd mutter. Apollo would start pacing on his perch, feathers puffed out, muttering nonsense under his breath that sounded eerily like Carl's tone. The more Carl raised his voice, the more Apollo repeated him. "You don't care about me," Apollo squawked one night, mimicking Carl perfectly. From then on, every argument echoed twice, once from Carl's mouth and once from Apollo's. When I tried to make dinner, he'd squawk, "Too salty," or "You call that food?" Every phrase made my stomach twist. It felt like Carl was in my head even when he wasn't in the room. I started having panic attacks in the bathroom with the shower running so he wouldn't hear me crying. I hated myself for thinking it, but I started to regret ever buying that bird. He used to make me laugh. Now he was just another reminder that I couldn't escape Carl. When I looked at my banking app one day, I saw that he had drained my savings account. I tried to be brave and confront him, but he backed me against the refrigerator and put his hand on my throat without squeezing and said, "My purchases are none of your business." I froze completely and couldn't speak. He smiled and walked away like nothing happened. The next day I told him I wanted him to move out, and he completely snapped in a way I had never seen before. He grabbed my laptop off the counter and smashed it on the floor while screaming that if I tried to leave him, he would kill me. He yelled that I was ungrateful and he had given up everything for me. I backed toward the door, but he blocked my path and started breaking everything he could reach. Picture frames shattered against the walls, and he flipped the kitchen table onto its side. Apollo was shrieking louder than I had ever heard, and I was sobbing and begging Carl to stop. He grabbed my phone out of my hand and threw it so hard it cracked a TV screen. Then he locked the front door and put the key in his pocket. "You're not leaving until you understand who is in charge," he growled. My chest felt like it was caving in because I realized he was actually holding me hostage in my own apartment. That's when he pulled something from his jacket pocket and my whole body went numb. It was a small handgun, and suddenly I knew exactly what he had spent my savings on. He didn't point it at me, but he set it on the counter between us like a threat. My neighbor must have heard the crashing because suddenly someone was pounding on my door asking if I was okay. Carl looked furious and whispered to me to say everything is fine. Before I could speak, Apollo started screaming in perfect mimicry of Carl's voice. "I'll kill you if you leave me. I'll kill you if you leave me," over and over at full volume. My neighbor had called the police when she heard the crashing and screaming coming from our apartment. Apollo's impersonation of Carl's threats was enough for them to break down the door and apprehend Carl. They arrested him for unlawful imprisonment and illegal possession after finding the weapon. I got a restraining order and changed all my locks the next day. Apollo never mimicked Carl's voice again. Now he sings and laughs along with me instead.